Hi fashion lovers, welcome back again to another amazing tutorial on Eleganza TV. And in today's video, I'll be showing you how to sew this trendy overbust corset with a stylish neckline. And if you're yet to see the pattern drafting tutorial, this is the thumbnail of the video. You can check our previous post. And when you're done watching the pattern drafting video, you can come back right here to join me and sew this beautiful corset top. So in the previous tutorial, I showed you how to cut your pattern on your fabric with the sewing allowance, and then I said that I'll be notching the half length and also the underbust for the front and the back pattern, and I'll be telling you the reason why I'm doing that later on. I went ahead to cut same way on my lining as you can see, and then I also add interfacing to my main fabric and my lining as well. So I'm just going to open up all the pattern on the front. We'll be starting with the front pattern first. So this is how it looks. Now I will go ahead to join them with 1/2 inch. So the main reason why I told you to notch the half length is so that when you're joining the pieces together, you should always make sure that the notches on the half length meet. So I'll go ahead to pin all of the panels together and then join with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll also be doing the same thing for my lining as well. So make sure that your half length and then your underbust points, the notches that you mark there, should meet when you're sewing. And so for the back pattern, I'll also be doing the same thing. I will open them up and then join with 1/2 inch. So I'll go ahead to join the two panels together to form one panel each. So before I go ahead to join the lining, like I said, you'll be joining your lining same way you join your main fabric. But before doing that, I want to first of all add chest word into the bust area. So I'm using just this center front and middle front to cut my pad. I will just go ahead to cut that on the bust line and place it on my chest wording, and that's how I got the pad I want to use for the bust area. So you can notice that the chest wording or pad did not start from the top length. I came down by 1/2 inch or 0.75 inch before placing my chest wording to iron it. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to do a bust caging on my lining. So I need the bust area to have thickness, to be very firm. So I want to show you how I join my lining. So that notches that I made on the half length, I will start pinning from there and then make sure that the both panels are equal. Then I'll start sewing from the bottom with 0.5 inch. So I'm just going to show you the whole process of everything. I'll be leaving the video to be slow enough so you can grab what I'm explaining or showing to you. Although I said this tutorial is an advanced class tutorial, but it is very beginners friendly. So I'm done joining one of the panel or both of the panel together. So I want to show you how to join this part that has a cup area. So what I want to do first of all, like I said, the notches on the half length should meet. Then the notches on the underbust, both of them should meet. Then I'll start my stitching from the bottom, sew through to the up, and I'll be sewing with 0.5 inch, of course. So when you're sewing, when you get to the underbust part, you're going to curve your stitch. So to make it easier for you, you can just use your pen to just draw out a bit of curve, and then you start sewing. So most of the time, sewing this part can be very tricky. So I like to use my pen to just sketch out the curve so that I can follow the line. And so this is what I have after stitching it. So when I turned it to the front, it was looking pointy. So I just went ahead to blend it. You can see what I'm doing right now. So I use my pen to like smoothen the curve to make it not to be pointy. And then after sewing that new stitch, I'll go ahead to lose that former stitch I made before. So now after I'm done with the stitch, I will go ahead to notch the underbust and then continue sewing the other panels off camera and show you what to do next. So now after sewing all the panels, I went ahead to notch the underbust and then I will open up the seam to iron it to make it relax. And then for the bust area, I'll be making use of my bust arm, or you can also call it a breast ball. So I'll put that under the bust area and then I will open up the seam to iron it. The main purpose for that is to give your bust a nice curve when you're ironing it. So after ironing it on the inside, I will turn it over to the front and then give it a very nice press to make all of the seams relax. So you can see the fine curve of the overbust corset already coming out. So I want to trim off that excess allowance on the bust area, or you can use your canvas to cover it up so it does not obstruct you when you want to do your bust caging. So for my bust caging, I'll be making use of original bone, of course, sewable bone. And then I want to first of all go ahead to draw out the lines that I'll be sewing on. So if you want to see a more detailed tutorial on bust caging, do let me know in the comment section. But with watching this, you should be able to grab it and understand how to do bust caging. So to get the structure for the neckline and also for the under bust, I will be sewing after sewing the normal bust caging on the bust area. I'll also be sewing on the top part. I'll be sewing on the arm side region and also on the under bust. So what I want to do next is measure the across front, and it is simply taking a horizontal measurement from one side of the chest to the other to ensure the corset fits well. So mine is 15 inches. Ensure that it is not too tight and not too loose. So 15 inches divided by 2 is 7.5. And then I'll go ahead to add half an inch for sewing allowance. And so from that 8 inches point, I'll go ahead to connect to my actual arm side. So as you can see, I folded my lining and my main fabric together so that I can cut the both of them equally. So now after doing this, I can go ahead to do my bust caging for the lining part.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever try.
So I just went ahead to sew around the lines that I drew for my bust caging, and then the boning is going to start from where the pad starts from, which is like 0.75 away from the top length. Then it will be stopping directly on the underbust line. So I'm done sewing on all the lines that I already sketched out. So what I want to show you next is how to sew on the top and also on the underbust. Most times the issue we have with bust caging that makes it not to sit right is because of all these curve lines. So I'm going to show you how to sew the bone to this curve line that we have on the chest line and also on the underbust. So normally your Vaseline bone is straight and it doesn't bend. So I'll be showing you the process, all this, the what I did to make it to be curvy so as to be able to sew on that curvy neckline. So I went ahead to cut the length that I need first of all, and then I'll be making use of my scissors to open up the Vaseline bone to take out the thread. And then inside the thread, there are springs inside. So I will go ahead to like push down the thread down to bring out the springs. And then I'm making use of my plier to just hold like one or two of the springs and then start drawing it. So while I'm using the plier to draw out the springs, I'll be pushing down the thread down. So that's going to give the Regeline bone a kind of curve. So you're going to continue this process till you get the curve that you need to sew on the neckline and also on the underbust. So you can also make use of a tweezer. I'll put the picture up so you can see what the tweezer looks like. Well, I don't have that right now, so I'm making use of a plier, but this plier process can be very stressful, so you just have to be patient with it. So just note that the more curved you get for your bones, the more stylish your neckline will be. So because of time, I don't want the video to be very long. I went ahead to sew on the top line and also on the underbust. And then this is what I have for my bust caging. Like I said, if you want a more detailed bust caging tutorial, do let me know in the comment section. I did this because a lot of us here are advanced students, so many people already know how to do bus caging. So I went ahead to turn it inside out, like I turned my bus caging outside. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but you can see the way I did it. Now I turned the inside to make it curvy at the front. So I want to go ahead to iron it and give it that exact curve I'm looking for. So as you're ironing, you're going to be molding it like as you're ironing, you're bending it to give it a good curve. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have a flat bust caging. It's not going to have that curve. So the trick is just to give it a very good press. Make sure that your iron is hot, and as you're ironing, you're molding it.
Yeah. No, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go.
This is how my bust caging looks. So what I want to go ahead to do next is cut fiber on the bust caging to flesh it out. So it's called fleshing. So this is how a fiber looks like. It looks like a pad, but it's more thick and more fuller than pad. So I went ahead to cut the fiber that will be enough from the top length to the underbust. So to flesh your bust caging, you need your fiber. So anytime you hear fleshing or bust caging, this is what you're talking about. So I took the lining and the fiber to my sewing machine, and I'll go ahead to run stitches on the edges of the bust caging. So when you're sewing, make sure to spread your fiber well so it doesn't squeeze on the inside. So it should be sitting well on the bust caging.
The wastelands through the highways till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go through the wastelands through the highways. And on we'll go.
So after sewing it, I'll go ahead to trim off the excess on the top and also on the bottom. What I want to do next is fix bonings on the line. I made use of the main fabric for my boning channel, and I also use Regiline boning, which is a sewable boning. So to achieve this, first of all, I'll measure the seam that I want to sew my boning channel on. After getting this, then I'll go ahead to cut the fabric I want to use. So the length is going to be the length that you measured on your main fabric, and then the wideness is 2.5 inches wide. So I'm making use of the biggest Regiline boning. So what I'm going to do is I will take the measurement of the seam that I'm going to use. I'll be taking out 0.5 inch on from the top and the bottom length. So I can say that you can take away half inch, but some persons really don't know how to sew with half an inch. So to be on the safer side, just use 0.75 inch. So I'll first of all be wrapping the buns. So I came down by 0.75 from the top, and then I'll start stitching on one side. And then after sewing it, I'll go ahead to wrap the buns to cover it up, and then fold the remaining pieces into two, then top stitch it. So this is how to wrap your Regiline bone with your fabric So after doing this, I'll go ahead to start stitching on my main fabric. So I like to start my stitch from the bottom and then sew through to the up. So I place my bone on the midpoint of the seam, and then I'll start stitching on the initial stitch I made when wrapping the bone. And then when you're stitching, one thing you need to do is to spread your fabric so that it does not have any kind of squeeze on the main fabric. So as you're stitching it, you go ahead to start spreading your fabric. And then when you get to the bust area, you still be doing the same thing. As you're sewing, you're spreading the fabric, and make sure that you're still placing it at the middle of the seam line. So after you're done, so you need to check well that the thing is at the middle of the seam. So I noticed that the top line, the top of the boning did not enter very well. So I will just go ahead to loosen it and re-sew it again. So from that top line, I'll start stitching the other side of the bone, and same way you did it before. So as you're sewing, you're spreading your fabric, and you can see the way I'm spreading my fabric well, so the bone sits well. So after sewing this one, I'll go ahead to sew the other boning channel off camera. So I just showed you the most difficult one, the one that you might find difficult, which is this particular one that I've explained. So the other ones, you are still going to use the same process. Wrap your bones first and then top stitch on the seam line. So you can do as much boning channel as you want. So guys, what I want you to notice is that notch on the underbust. I just went ahead to like bend it a bit so you know where the underbust point is when you want to iron. So I'll go ahead to fix my bones off camera. Like I said before, I'll be sewing on the last seam and also create other boning channels that you want. You can do any style that you want. So just be creative. So guys, I'm done sewing the bones for the front part and also for the back. So I want to show you how to iron it. Now, first of all, you'll be ironing the sides flat. So after doing that, you're going to iron the underbust part. It's also going to be flat too. Then for the bust region, you'll be making use of your bust arm. So while ironing, you can see the way I'm bending the underbust to make sure that the underbust shows very well. And then I'm going to give the bust region a very good press, give it a good curve. So just continue ironing till you get the exact curve that you need to make sure that all of the bones on the bust region are curvy. So guys, after you're done with that, you go ahead to turn the neckline of the overbust and also the arm side. So when I was making this video, I went ahead to turn the neckline before fixing the bone, which was a mistake on my part. But then I now losing it, like I went back to lose it and then redo it again. I went back to losing it, fix my bones, and then turn the neckline again. So that's the reason why you can't see bones for this particular one that I was making. But like I said before you turn your neckline, you should first of all fix your bones for your main fabric first, fix the boning channels. So after you have done that, you can go ahead to start turning the neckline. So I'll be sewing along with my hemming gum. So after sewing the neckline, I went ahead to notch the seams and then top stitch it on the lining part. And when I'm done top stitching the neckline, I'll go ahead to sew the arm side to the same way I sewed the neckline. So after sewing, I'm going to use my scissors to push out the pointy part on the chest line, and then I'll take it over to my ironing table to give the neckline and the arm side a good press. So you can see how the front part looks. So what I want to go ahead to do now is stitch the lining and the fabric together. So I just place them together to make sure that they are equal, and then I will just stitch with 1/2 inch. So I'll also be pinning the bottom of the top, and then I'll also stitch the bottom. So if you notice that the bust area with the lining is not well relaxed, you're going to turn it inside out and then add hemming gum to it. Add hemming gum to the fiber, which is the fleshing of the bust caging. Then iron it together with the lining, like give it a good press to get a neat finishing, to get that smoothness on the bust area. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you're going to turn it to the inside, I didn't show that part because of time. You're going to turn it to the inside and then add hemming gum to it, and then iron it together with your main fabric. So this is how the front part of my corset looks. Now when you're creating yours, I hope yours is more finer than mine, okay? So guys, for the back pattern, I went ahead to place my lining and the main fabric together, and I'll just pin them together to just keep it on hold. As you can see, I have fixed my boning channel on the back already. So the next thing I want to do is fix the lacing bar for the back. So I cut out this fabric of 5 inches wide, and it is longer than the back length. So what I want to do is I'll place the center back in between the lacing bar, and I'll just go ahead to secure it with a pin. So I will start stitching my bones. I'm using a ridge line bone. Then after sewing the ridge line bone, I can insert a plastic bone inside of it for more support. So I'll start sewing my ridge line bone from the midpoint on one side, as you can see. And then after sewing that side, I'll go ahead to sew another one towards the end of the lacing bar. So then on my center back, I'll go ahead to place another ridge line bone, and I'll start stitching at the end of the lacing bar. So I'll be stitching on one side of the ridge line bone, and then I would go ahead to cover it up to top stitch the other side of the ridge line bone. So just watch closely and see how I'm doing it. So this is one technique to do your lacing bar. Another technique is just to close it up, to close the lacing bar up, and then top stitch a boning channel to insert your plastic bone in between. So just go ahead to do whatever you find easier to do. So before I go ahead to iron my fabric, I just want to show you how to wrap the top of the corset for the back. So I cut a straight pieces of about 2.5 inches wide, and it's longer than my main fabric. So I'll just sew it on one side, and then after sewing, I will go ahead to like turn it inside and wrap it close like a bias, like when you're fixing your bias. So I'll be doing this same process that I did for this one of the back. I'll be doing it for the other back. I just wanted to show you this part so it didn't look as if I didn't show you some part of the tutorial. So next, I want to place the front and the back, the side together and sew with my sewing allowance of 1 inch. So make sure that the half length of the front and the back meet together. Like I said, that's the main reason why I notched the half length. So I noticed that at the top line, at the arm side, it wasn't equal. Now the reason for this is because if you remember that when I was sewing the arm side of the front part, I trimmed it a bit. So because of that trim, it affected the back. So I want to go ahead to trim the same allowance I trimmed for the front. I'll go ahead to trim the same thing, then refix the bias I fixed on the top part before sewing my allowance of 1 inch. I'll just explain again because I didn't video that part. So I will lose the bias I made already for the top of the back and then trim off the excess allowance. I think it's about 1 inch or 0.5 inch thereabout. Then after trimming it, I will go ahead to fix the bias again before I will go ahead to sew the allowance on the side. So I hope you understand what I'm saying now. So I'll be sewing the 1 inch seam allowance I added when cutting on my fabric. Then after sewing, I will go ahead to measure the body size on the front to make sure that it's equal with my body measurements. So now after sewing, I'll go ahead to trim off the excess allowance, leaving about half an inch. And then I just went ahead to notch the waistline. So the reason why I'm notching the waistline, you will see later on. So next thing I want to do is iron the seams open, or you can iron it to one side, whichever one you want. And then I will fix the bones that I fixed on the other side of the corset. I'll be fixing it on the side part. Then after fixing the bones, I will go ahead to bias the bottom of the corset. So I'm already gonna head to wrap two bones that I want to fix to the side part of the corset. So you can see the way I folded the top part of the fabric, and then I'll go ahead to stitch on my main fabric, stitch the bone on my main fabric just the way I did for the other sides. And then while I'm stitching, I'll be spreading the fabric just like I said before. You'll be stitching directly on the midpoint of the seam, and then while sewing, you're spreading the fabric. So sew to the end. After sewing to the end, I'll do the same process for the other side. So because of the way the corset is, I can't turn it and start stitching from the bottom. So I had to stitch the other side from the top. So I'll do the same process for the other side, and then I'll go ahead to take it to my ironing table to give it a good press. So guys, I went ahead to sew the bias on the hemline of the corset. So it's nothing serious. It's just a straight cut, and then you're going to top stitch it just like a bias. So after doing this, I'll just go ahead to give my corset a nice press, and then I will go ahead to fix the eyelet for the back. So I don't have an eyelet machine, so I'll take it to the market where I fix eyelet. So see the way I ironing the waistline. So that's the main reason why I notched the waist inside the waistline. So I just folded it inside, and then I placed my bust arm underneath the bottom part to give it a nice curve. So after sewing, if you want to fix a cover back to your corset, then you can go ahead to fix that. So this is how the corset looks after I am done with everything. So guys, if you find this video helpful, please do well to subscribe, and if you like to see more amazing content like this, thank you guys for watching. See you in our next tutorial.